It was a quiet evening in the small town of Oak Ridge. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted with soft shades of orange and purple. The streets were empty, save for the occasional car passing by. The small town was peaceful, its people content with their simple lives. Jack Turner was one of them. Jack had recently returned to Oak Ridge after a few years in the military. He'd left to serve in a distant country, but now he was back home, trying to rebuild his life. He had found work as a mechanic, fixing old cars and machines in his small shop. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. He spent most of his time working on engines, drinking coffee, and listening to the radio. One evening, as Jack was closing up his shop, he heard a strange noise coming from the old warehouse at the edge of town. It wasn't the usual sounds of the wind or the creaking of the building. No, this noise was different. It was a soft, almost melodic hum, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Curious, Jack grabbed his flashlight and walked over to the warehouse. He had lived in Oak Ridge for years and knew that the warehouse hadn't been used in a long time. It was an old, abandoned building, left behind by the town's once thriving factories. No one ever came here anymore. As he approached the entrance, he noticed something strange. The door was slightly open, and there was a faint glow coming from inside. His heart raced. The glow was unusual, not like anything he had ever seen before. It was a pale, bluish light that seemed to pulse and flicker like the light from a distant star. Jack hesitated for a moment. He wasn't sure what he was walking into, but something told him he couldn't just ignore it. Stepping forward, he pushed the door open with a creak. The inside of the warehouse was dark, except for the strange glow coming from a corner of the room. He moved cautiously, shining his flashlight around the room. The glow seemed to be coming from a large metal object lying broken and twisted on the floor. Jack's mind raced. What was this? It looked like something from a science fiction movie, an alien spaceship or some kind of strange technology. As he stepped closer, he froze. There was something, or rather someone, lying near the wreckage. It was a girl, a young woman, her hair shimmering with an unnatural silver hue. She was unconscious, lying on the cold floor with a faint blue glow surrounding her. Jack's first thought was to run for help, but something stopped him. The girl looked fragile, and there was something about her, something that made Jack feel that she was not like anyone he had ever seen before. She didn't belong here, but at the same time, she looked like she needed help. Without thinking, Jack knelt down beside her. Her skin was cool to the touch, but she wasn't cold. She was just different. He could feel a strange energy emanating from her, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing bright, glowing orbs that seemed to pierce through him. Who are you?" Jack stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl blinked several times, as if trying to focus. Her voice was soft, but it held a strange, melodic quality. "I am Lyra," she said, her words slow and measured. I need your help." Jack wasn't sure what to make of her words. She seemed confused, disoriented, but there was no time to ask questions. The building suddenly shook, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from outside. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't alone. Someone else was coming. "Who's out there?" Jack asked, standing up and looking around the warehouse. His hand instinctively reached for his phone, but he quickly realized it wouldn't be much help in this situation. The warehouse was far from the nearest phone line, and even if he called the police, they wouldn't get here in time. Lyra sat up, her eyes wide with fear. They will come for me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You must protect me." Before Jack could respond, the door to the warehouse slammed open, and several figures in dark clothing stormed inside. They were armed, their faces hidden behind masks. The moment they saw Lyra, They raised their weapons, shouting orders in a language Jack didn't understand. Jack's instincts kicked in. Without thinking, he grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her to her feet. "Run!" he shouted. "We have to get out of here!" The figures advanced, but Jack was faster. He pulled Lyra toward the back door of the warehouse, his mind racing for an escape. He didn't know who these people were or what they wanted, but he wasn't about to let them take Lyra. The cold night air hit them as they burst through the door and into the alley behind the warehouse. Jack could hear the sounds of pursuit behind them, but he didn't dare look back. He focused on getting as far away as possible. They ran down the narrow alley, ducking between shadows, until they reached Jack's old truck parked on the side of the road. Jack didn't hesitate. He yanked open the door and shoved Lyra into the passenger seat. "Stay down," he told her, slamming the door shut. He climbed into the driver's seat, his hands shaking as he started the engine. The truck roared to life and they sped off into the night. Lyra's breathing was shallow, her eyes darting nervously around. "They will find us," she said, her voice filled with fear. "You don't understand. My power." "I don't understand anything right now," Jack muttered, keeping his eyes on the road. "But I'll figure it out later. Right now, we need to get as far away as possible." For a long while, neither of them spoke. The sound of the truck's engine was the only thing that filled the air. Jack's mind was racing. Who were those people, and why were they after Lyra? He couldn't answer those questions, not yet. All he knew was that she was in danger, and it was his fault for getting involved. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice softer this time. "You don't know what I am, do you?" Jack glanced at her, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "No, I don't, but I'm starting to think I don't want to. I am not human," she said, her voice filled with sadness. "I am from a far-off world, and my power, it could destroy everything." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What kind of power?" Lyra's eyes flickered, glowing faintly in the dark. "The power to control life and death. The power to destroy entire galaxies. And those people, they want to use me. They want to control me, to make me their weapon." Jack's grip on the wheel tightened. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A power like that. It sounded like something out of a nightmare. But the fear in Lyra's voice told him it was real. "Why me?" Jack asked. "Why did you ask for my help?" "Because you are the only one who can stop me," Lyra replied, her voice barely a whisper. "You hold the key." Jack didn't understand. He had no idea what she meant, but one thing was clear. He had no choice but to help her. As the truck drove through the quiet streets, Jack could feel the weight of what he had just gotten into. There was no going back now. Whatever was coming, whatever power Lyra held, he had to protect her. The fate of the universe might depend on it. The night was quiet as Jack drove. His headlights cut through the dark, illuminating the road ahead. His mind raced, trying to understand everything that had happened in the last few hours. Who were the people chasing them? Why did Lyra say that her power could destroy everything? And why had she said he was the key? Jack glanced over at Lyra. She was sitting quietly in the passenger seat, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. She seemed lost in thought. Her glowing eyes dimmed now, but still strange and unsettling. Jack could feel her fear, but also something else. There was a deep sadness in her that he couldn't quite understand. She wasn't just scared of the people chasing her. She was afraid of herself. They had driven for hours, taking back roads to avoid the main highways. Jack had no idea where they were going, but he knew they couldn't stay in Oak Ridge. They needed to be somewhere far from the people who wanted to hurt Lyra. Somewhere safe. But where? Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jack pulled off the road and parked by a small cabin deep in the woods. It was isolated, far from the nearest town. The perfect place to hide, at least for a while. Lyra didn't speak as Jack turned off the engine. She just stared out the window, her expression unreadable. Jack didn't know what to say either. The silence between them was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like they both needed time to think. Jack opened the truck door and stepped outside. The air was cold, and the sound of crickets filled the night. He looked around the small clearing. There was nothing but trees and darkness. It was as if they were the only two people left in the world. Lyra slowly stepped out of the truck and followed him to the cabin. She moved carefully, almost as if she was afraid of something. Jack turned and looked at her. He could see the weight of her thoughts in her eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft. Lyra didn't answer right away. She took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. I don't know," she said quietly. "I've never been this far from home before. I don't understand why they're after me, or why you're helping me." Jack hesitated before answering. "You don't have to explain it all to me right now, but if you want, we can talk. We need to figure this out together." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time since they met, she smiled. A small, sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. It made Jack feel a little better. Maybe they could figure this out after all. They entered the cabin. It was simple but cozy. There was a small fireplace, a few chairs, and a bed in the corner. Jack didn't expect to stay long, but it would do for now. He started a fire in the fireplace, the crackling flames filling the room with warmth. Lyra sat down on one of the chairs, her eyes still distant. Jack sat across from her, trying to figure out what to say next. There were so many questions, but where should he start? After a few moments, Jack spoke. "Lyra, what exactly are you? You said your power could destroy everything. What does that mean?" Lyra looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together nervously. "I don't know how to explain it. I was born on a planet called Tryon. My people, we were different. We were chosen to protect the universe. Our abilities are connected to the stars themselves." She paused, as if searching for the right words. "My power comes from a thing called the Star Key. It's an ancient artifact, and it's been with me since I was a child. It's part of me, like a part of my soul. But the key, it's not just a power. It's a weapon." Jack frowned. "A weapon? But you don't look like a weapon." Lyra's eyes flickered, glowing softly. "I didn't ask for this. No one does. The Star Key was meant to keep the universe safe from things far worse than anything you can imagine. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "The people who were chasing you, they wanted the key, didn't they?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. They were from a powerful empire. They want to use the key to remake the universe in their image. They don't care about the consequences. They just want control." Jack felt the weight of her words. He couldn't even imagine the kind of power she was talking about. A weapon that could destroy the universe? It sounded like something out of a bad dream. "So, why did you say I'm the key?" Jack asked, still confused. Lyra hesitated. She looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Because of you. Your presence. It changes the Star Key. I don't understand how or why. But when you're near me, the key reacts. It's like it's connected to you in some way. And that's why they're after you too. They know that you hold the power to either stop me or help me control the key." Jack was silent for a moment, trying to process everything. He didn't know what to think. It felt like he had been pulled into something much bigger than he could handle. But the look in Lyra's eyes told him that he had no choice. He couldn't turn his back on her now. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice serious. Lyra looked away, her expression troubled. "I don't know. I've never been this far from my people. And I don't know how to control the key. If I can't control it, I might destroy everything." Jack leaned forward, trying to reassure her. "You don't have to do it alone. We'll figure it out together. I don't know much about ancient alien artifacts, but I know how to fix things. We can figure out how to control it. I'll help you." Lyra looked at him, her eyes softening. "Why? Why would you help me?" Jack shrugged, trying to hide his unease. "Because I don't know what else to do. You're not the only one who's scared, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here." There was a long silence as the two of them sat in the cabin, the fire crackling in the background. Jack could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him, but he also felt a sense of determination. He didn't know how this would end, but he wasn't going to let Lyra face it alone. After a while, Lyra stood up and walked over to the window. She stared out into the darkness, her gaze distant. "They will come for me. They will never stop. And if they find me—" Jack walked over to her, standing beside her. "Then we'll stop them first." She turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "You really believe that?" Jack nodded. "I have to. There's no other choice." Lyra didn't say anything. She just stared at him for a long moment before looking back out the window. For the first time since they met, Jack saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We'll figure this out," he said softly. "Together." The days following their arrival at the cabin were quiet, but the tension in the air never seemed to ease. Jack and Lyra spent most of their time in silence, trying to understand what was happening, what they needed to do. Every now and then, Jack would ask Lyra more questions about her people, her powers, and the star key. But every time, Lyra would grow quiet, as if the answers were locked inside her, and she was afraid to let them out. Jack tried his best to keep things as normal as possible. He worked on fixing the small things around the cabin, filling the wood stove, checking the locks, and making sure the place was secure. He didn't know how long they'd be there, but he knew they couldn't stay in one place forever. The people who were after Lyra would keep searching until they found her, and Jack wasn't sure how long they could avoid them. One evening, as Jack was sitting by the fire, cleaning his tools, Lyra approached him. Her face was serious, and her eyes were full of worry. "We need to move," she said quietly. "I can feel them getting closer." Jack looked up at her, his heart sinking. He didn't want to leave the cabin, but he knew she was right. They couldn't stay in one place for too long. "Where will we go?" Jack asked, standing up and putting his tools down. "I don't know," Lyra replied. "But we can't stay here. They'll find us eventually." Jack nodded, but a part of him didn't want to leave the safety of the cabin. It had become their refuge, the one place where they could feel safe, even if only for a short time. But safety was a luxury they couldn't afford anymore. "We'll leave in the morning," Jack said, trying to sound calm. "We'll figure something out." That night, they both tried to sleep, but neither of them found rest. Jack's mind raced with questions. Where would they go next? How would they stay one step ahead of the people after them? And what was it that Lyra wasn't telling him? The next morning, after a quick breakfast, they packed what little they had and loaded it into the truck. Jack tried to keep his mind focused on the road ahead, but the feeling of being watched never left him. He kept checking the rear-view mirror, expecting to see the dark figures of their enemies closing in behind them. As they drove through the quiet streets of a small town, Jack's eyes suddenly caught something in the distance. It was a figure, tall, with a long coat. The person was standing by a black car, watching them closely. Jack's stomach tightened. "That's them," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "They're here." Jack's heart raced. He didn't know what to do. They were surrounded. No matter which way they went, the people after them would catch up. "We need to get out of here," Jack said, his voice low and urgent. "Now!" He slammed his foot on the gas, making the truck speed down the street. But as they rounded a corner, Jack saw more of them. They were everywhere, at least 5 or 6 men, all wearing black, all watching them. Lyra's breath quickened. They've surrounded us. There's no way out. Jack's grip on the steering wheel tightened. They were trapped. His mind raced, looking for any possible way to escape. Lyra, can you use your power to stop them? Jack asked, glancing at her. She shook her head. I can't control it. If I try, it might destroy everything. Jack's heart sank. They were on their own. Without another word, Jack made a sharp turn, heading down a narrow alley. He hoped it would give them some cover, but the sound of the black cars following them made it clear they were still being chased. He kept driving, his mind spinning, until he saw an old, abandoned warehouse ahead. The building looked like it had been empty for years, but it was their only option. Jack pulled the truck into the dark entrance, hoping it would provide enough cover. He cut the engine and turned to Lyra. We have to get out of here, now. They both jumped out of the truck and ran toward the back of the warehouse, trying to find some kind of hiding place. But as they reached the rear door, they heard footsteps. They were close. Get inside, Jack ordered. Lyra didn't hesitate. She followed him into the building, the old wood creaking beneath their feet. They moved quickly, weaving through the maze of old crates and metal barrels. Jack could hear the footsteps getting louder, closer. Suddenly, the sound of a door slamming open echoed through the warehouse. The footsteps stopped. Where are they? A deep voice called out. Jack froze, holding his breath. The men were searching for them, and they were getting closer. There was no way to hide. We can't stay here, Jack whispered to Lyra. We need to move. But as he turned to look at her, he noticed something strange. Lyra was standing still, her eyes glowing brighter than before. Her hands were outstretched, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. No! Jack shouted. Don't! But it was too late. Lyra's power surged, filling the warehouse with an overwhelming, crackling energy. The crates around them began to shake, and the floor cracked beneath their feet. Jack felt a wave of heat hit him, and he had to cover his face to protect himself from the intense energy. He turned to Lyra, his heart racing. What are you doing? You have to stop! But Lyra didn't hear him. She was lost in the power, her eyes glowing with a strange light. The force around them continued to build, threatening to tear the warehouse apart. Jack had no choice. He had to stop her, or they'd both be destroyed. He rushed toward her, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. The energy around them began to dissipate, the crackling fading as the power within Lyra calmed down. I'm sorry, Lyra whispered, her voice shaky. I didn't mean to. I don't know what happened. I couldn't control it. Jack could barely catch his breath. It's okay. Just try not to do that again. We can't afford to make any more mistakes. Lyra nodded, her head hanging low in shame. She didn't speak for a long time. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the warehouse. There you are. Jack turned to see the figure of a man step out from the shadows. He was tall, wearing dark clothes and a cold expression. His eyes were hidden behind a mask, but the malice in his voice was clear. You shouldn't have run, the man said, his voice full of menace. You've made a big mistake. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize the man, but he knew that look. It was the look of someone who would do anything to get what they wanted. Who are you? Jack demanded, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. The man stepped forward. I'm someone who's been looking for Lyra for a very long time, and now I'm going to take her. And you? You're going to help me. The man's voice echoed in the dim light of the warehouse. Jack's heart raced, his mind trying to find a way out of this mess. The figure in front of him was calm, confident, and clearly dangerous. His presence felt like a cold shadow in the room, and Jack could see the glint of a weapon hidden under his coat. Lyra stood beside Jack, her face pale, her eyes filled with fear. She didn't move, but Jack could feel the tremble in her body. She knew who this man was, and it wasn't good. Who are you? Jack asked again. his voice firm despite the pounding in his chest. The man smiled, but it was a smile that held no warmth. "My name is Torin," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I've been searching for Lyra for a long time, and now I'm finally going to take her back." Jack's grip tightened on the edge of a metal crate nearby. He wasn't going to let this man take Lyra, not without a fight. "Why do you want her so badly?" Jack demanded. "What is she to you?" Torin's smile faded and his eyes narrowed. "She is everything," he said, his voice hard. "She holds the Star Key, the most powerful artifact in the universe. With it, I will have the power to reshape everything, to create a universe of my own design. And you, human, you're just in my way." Jack's stomach twisted at Torin's words. He had heard of the Star Key before, but now, hearing the way Torin spoke about it, Jack understood its true power. The universe, the entire galaxy, could be changed, destroyed, or remade with that kind of power. And Lyra, the girl standing beside him, held it. She was both a weapon and the key to a power far beyond anything Jack could imagine. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she whispered. "I just want to be free. I don't want to be used as a weapon." Jack turned to her, his hand gently resting on her arm. "We'll figure this out," he said, trying to reassure her. "We won't let him use you." Torin's eyes flickered with annoyance, and he took a step forward, his hand resting on the handle of the weapon under his coat. "You don't understand, human. She's not in control of the Star Key. She never has been. And if you keep standing in my way, I will destroy you." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't back down. He couldn't let Torin take Lyra. He had to find a way to stop him. Without warning, Jack lunged at Torin, grabbing a metal pipe that had been left on the floor. He swung it at Torin, hoping to catch him off guard. But Torin was fast. In a blur of movement, he sidestepped and twisted Jack's arm behind his back, forcing him to drop the pipe. "You really think you can stop me?" Torin said, his grip tightening on Jack's wrist. "You're nothing but a weak human. You're not even worth the time." Jack gritted his teeth, struggling to break free. His body ached, but he refused to give in. He wasn't going to let Torin win. He wasn't going to let Lyra fall into his hands. From behind him, he heard Lyra's voice, trembling but filled with determination. "Stop! You have to stop!" Jack turned his head just in time to see her raise her hands, her eyes glowing brightly. A strange energy filled the air, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. Jack felt a wave of heat surge through him, but he didn't pull away. He could see that Lyra was struggling to control her power. The Star Key inside her was reacting to her fear, and the energy was growing stronger with every passing second. "Lyra, no!" Jack shouted. "You have to stay calm." But it was too late. The power inside her exploded. The entire warehouse shook as if it was being torn apart. The walls cracked, the windows shattered, and the metal crates that had been scattered around the room were thrown against the walls. The energy crackling from Lyra's hands filled the air with a blinding light, and for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Jack shielded his eyes, trying to block out the brightness. He could hear Torin's voice, but it was drowned out by the force of the power surrounding them. He could feel the intense heat radiating from Lyra, and he knew that if this continued, they would all be destroyed. "Lyra!" Jack shouted again, his voice strained. "You have to stop! You're going to destroy everything!" Through the blinding light, Jack saw Lyra's face, twisted with pain and fear. She was losing control, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The power inside her was too much. Just as Jack thought it was over, something unexpected happened. The energy around Lyra suddenly faltered, and the light began to dim. Slowly, the power faded, and the air grew still. Lyra collapsed to her knees, her hands falling to the floor. Her eyes were wide with exhaustion and fear. Jack rushed to her side, kneeling down beside her. "Lyra, Are you okay? She looked up at him, her face pale. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice weak. I couldn't control it. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Jack took her hand, trying to steady her. It's not your fault. You're not the one who's dangerous. He is. Torrin stood in the distance, unscathed, his expression filled with rage. This isn't over, he growled. You've made a big mistake. You think you can stop me, but you're wrong. I'll get the star key, and when I do, everything will change. He turned and disappeared into the shadows, his footsteps echoing through the broken warehouse. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at Lyra. She was still shaking, but the immediate danger was over. For now. We need to go, Jack said, helping Lyra to her feet. He's going to come back, and we won't be able to hide forever. Lyra nodded, but her expression was still filled with worry. What do we do now? He's too strong. I can't fight him. I'm not strong enough. Jack turned to her, his eyes filled with determination. We don't have to fight him, not yet, but we need to figure out what this star key is really about. We need to understand its power, and we need to find a way to stop Torrin before he can use it. Lyra looked at him, and for the first time since they met, she smiled. It wasn't a sad smile, but one filled with hope. You're right, she said quietly. We have to stop him, together. And with that, they both walked out of the warehouse, the broken walls behind them a reminder of the power they were up against. The morning after the battle at the warehouse, the sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. Jack and Lyra were driving again, heading toward an uncertain future. The road stretched out before them, empty and quiet. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Torrin wouldn't give up. He couldn't. They had driven all night, leaving the warehouse far behind. Jack knew they couldn't keep running. They had to find a way to stop Torrin once and for all. They had to learn more about the Star Key and what it truly meant for the universe. Where are we going? Lyra asked, her voice soft. She hadn't said much since they left the warehouse. The weight of everything was pressing down on her, and Jack could see the sadness in her eyes. I don't know, Jack replied, but we need answers. We can't keep running. We need to figure out how to stop Torrin and his people. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. I don't even know where to start. The Star Key is part of me. It's connected to my people, my world. But I don't remember much about it. It's like the memory of it is locked away. Jack glanced at her, his expression softening. He could see the pain in her eyes. She was carrying a heavy burden, and he wasn't sure how to help her, but he was determined to stand by her. They would figure it out together. I think I know someone who can help, Jack said, his voice steady. Lyra looked at him, her eyebrows raised in surprise. Who? An old friend of mine, Jack replied. He's a scientist. He knows a lot about ancient technology and artifacts. If anyone can help us understand the Star Key, it's him. Lyra's eyes filled with hope. You think he can help me? I think he can help both of us, Jack said, giving her a reassuring smile. But we have to find him first. They spent the next few hours driving, moving further away from the danger. Jack didn't know if it was enough, but he had to believe it was. They needed time, and they needed answers. As they drove through the rolling hills, Jack began to tell Lyra more about his friend, Dr. Simon Carter. He had known Simon for years, ever since Jack's time in the military. Simon had always been fascinated by ancient technology and artifacts, and he had a reputation for uncovering secrets that others couldn't. He had connections with people who could help them, and Jack trusted him more than anyone. I think we'll be safe there, Jack said as he took a sharp turn onto a dirt road. Simon has a lab hidden deep in the mountains. No one knows about it except a few trusted people. Lyra nodded, her face showing a mix of relief and uncertainty. I trust you, she said quietly. I just don't want to put you in danger. You've already done so much for me." Jack smiled, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile of determination. "I'm not leaving you, Lyra. We're in this together. I won't let Torin or anyone else take you." For the first time in days, Lyra's face softened, and a small smile tugged at her lips. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It gave Jack the strength to keep going. Hours later, they arrived at the base of the mountains. The road was narrow, winding its way through dense trees and thick fog. Jack's truck bounced along the rough path as they climbed higher into the mountains. The air was cooler up here, and the sound of the truck's engine echoed in the stillness. "This place feels different," Lyra said, looking around at the misty landscape. Like the air here is older." Jack nodded. "It's an old place. Not many people come up here. Simon chose this location because it's hidden from the rest of the world. We'll be safe here." After a few more minutes of driving, they reached the entrance to Simon's lab. It was hidden behind a large rock formation, almost invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. Jack stopped the truck, got out, and walked toward a large metal door built into the side of the mountain. He pressed a small button on the wall, and a faint click sounded as the door slowly slid open. Inside was a high-tech lab filled with machines and strange equipment. Jack had been here many times before, but today it felt different. It felt like the start of something new. Lyra stepped out of the truck, looking around with wide eyes. "This place is amazing," she said in awe. "I've never seen anything like it." Jack smiled. "Simon's a genius. He's worked on some of the most advanced technology in the world. If anyone can help us, it's him." They entered the lab, and Jack immediately called out, "Simon, you here?" A voice responded from the back of the lab. "Jack, it's been a while." The voice was friendly, familiar. A moment later, Dr. Simon Carter appeared from behind a large console. He was tall, with glasses perched on the end of his nose, his hair a little messy from working. When he saw Jack and Lyra, his face lit up with recognition. "Jack, it's good to see you," Simon said, walking over and shaking Jack's hand. He turned to Lyra, his eyes narrowing as he took in her appearance. "And this must be Lyra," he said, his tone changing to one of curiosity. "I've heard a lot about you." Lyra smiled shyly, but she didn't speak. "Simon, we need your help," Jack said, his voice serious. "Lyra has something dangerous. It's called the Star Key, and there are people after her, people who want to use it for their own gain." Simon raised an eyebrow. "The Star Key? That's some heavy stuff. I've heard rumors about it, but I never thought I'd actually meet someone who holds it." Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I don't understand it. I don't know how to control it, and I'm afraid of what will happen if I can't." Simon studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll help you. But we need to take this slow. The Star Key is unlike anything I've ever seen. We need to understand it before we do anything rash." Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, they were going to get the answers they needed. Simon led them to a large table in the center of the lab, where he had set up several computers and other equipment. He motioned for them to sit. "Let's get started," he said. For the next few hours, Simon worked tirelessly, scanning Lyra's DNA and analyzing the energy readings coming from her. Jack watched as Simon typed rapidly on the computer, his face serious. "This is incredible," Simon muttered under his breath. "The Star Key isn't just an artifact. It's alive. It's part of Lyra in a way I didn't expect." Lyra looked up, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "What do you mean?" Simon adjusted his glasses and turned to face her. "I mean that the Star Key is connected to your biology. It's not just something you carry around. It's a part of you. It's like a second heartbeat, a force inside you that you can't control. But also, A force that controls you. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. So what does that mean? Is there a way to separate her from it? Simon shook his head. I don't think so. But understanding it, learning how to control it, that's our best bet. Lyra looked at Jack, her face pale. But what if I can't control it? What if I destroy everything? Jack took her hand, squeezing it gently. We'll figure it out. We'll do it together. And for the first time since their journey began, Lyra believed him.